So if you have a block, have it close by. We're going to start in a seated position today. And if you are more comfortable sitting on your block, by all means, you can do that. And if you don't have a block, it's not necessary. So coming to a comfortable seated position, legs crossed in front of you, adjusting so that you can feel your weight in the center of your sit bones, which are those pointy bones at the bottom of your pelvis. And when we sit comfortably on these points centered, it creates a little bit more sense of freedom in the spine and the low back, allowing the shoulders to rest comfortably above your hips and resting with your hands on your knees, either palms up or palms down. Palms down if you are feeling, if you're kind of how you've been feeling emotionally, physically has been kind of more towards the stress or anxiety kind of feelings, palms down, maybe linked to moving more inward. Whereas if you've been feeling a little tired or sluggish, palms up can be more thought towards creating openness and energy. If the eyes are not closed, go ahead and allow the eyes to close, drawing inward. And begin by noticing how your body feels. Noticing the places where your mind is drawn to, and then just questioning why. What sensations do you feel? What kind of thoughts bring you into the spaces that your mind draws to the physical sensations in your body? Oftentimes, it's a feeling of tension or gripping or holding. And just allow the mind to sit there without allowing the thoughts to go to the why. And instead, just allowing the breath to move into these spaces, thinking of as you bring the inhale into it, where specifically can your body benefit from this idea of letting go, of releasing tension and gripping. And then as you exhale, feel the sense of softening and release. And these feelings of tension and gripping are things that bind us, that hold us back, that constrict us. All of these kind of associated with lack of freedom, lack of movement. And then start to shift your awareness to your breath. And begin by noticing where in the body you feel your breath, where it moves easily, where it is free to move, free to flow. Breath is a form of energy, of prana, of life force. And begin to notice those areas where your breath does not move freely. Maybe it moves more freely through one nostril than the other. Maybe you feel constriction somewhere within the lungs or the ribs. And again, letting go of judgment, letting go of the reasons why. Instead, bring this sense of softening, of liberation. And so in yoga, the word moksha is the term associated with liberation, of freedom, freedom from ignorance, freedom from unuseful thinking. And oftentimes, when we feel trapped, when we feel stuck, it's not necessarily things outside of us that are keeping us stuck, but instead the thoughts associated with it. And in our practice today, we'll be moving into the space of the hip, which is a place that often feels trapped, stuck. So as we move and you feel thoughts of the why or thoughts of resistance, just kind of allow yourself the space to create more space, to create more freedom, to liberate and move. And bring your hands back to where your elbows rest under your shoulders, and just give your shoulders a couple of rotations in one direction. And then moving them in the opposite direction, feeling the shoulder blades glide. And then slowly open your eyes. So we're going to start with the block. So bring the block out in front of you. And I'm going to let you choose. Being at the most narrow is probably, if your hips are tight, the best place to start. You can go to wide or even wider, but wherever you decide, bring your feet on either side of your block. So allow the full foot to rest on the block. So at least the knuckles and the heels, and the knees to open wide. And just notice, first of all, oftentimes as we go into this externally rotated position, we feel that like resistance right away. So just kind of notice that. And bring your hands to fingertips, bring them behind your hips. Press down, lift your hips off the ground and take them as close to the block as you can. And then bring your palms to the ground and just lean back slightly. So kind of finding that place, how far back do you need to lean in order to let go of whatever's holding you back in your hips? For me, it tends to be my inner thighs, a little bit on my lower back. So just kind of using the breath to move into those spaces. And then start to press your feet into the block. So start with the ball mount of your big toe and your inner heel. So pressing a little bit more with awareness of the inner toe and the inner heel. And notice what you feel going on in your legs and your thighs. Might be a little shaking going on here. And then take your hips back, remove the block. Bring your right foot to the floor, lift your left ankle and cross it over your right thigh. You may need to take your foot further forward, lean back, take your left hand and press your knee open a little bit more. Notice if pointing your toes or flexing your ankle creates more of a sense of release in your hip. And then decide which one creates more space and stay in that position. Use the breath to move into whatever sensations you feel going on in your hip, wherever they may be. And then you may opt to walk the foot closer or lift and bring the hips closer to your heel. So you have the freedom to choose here. We all have different hips. We all have different bodies. So kind of using your own judgment, you can also walk your chest closer to your shin. External rotation for me is very easy. So I might get a little bit closer than other people are. But as you stay in this position, start to notice what's holding on, what's holding you back. Notice the thoughts that come into your mind about it. And then instead of sticking with those thoughts, go to the breath instead. Using the exhales to kind of release a little deeper into the hip. And then shift the hips away from the heel. Take your right heel towards your left hip. Bring the left foot down to the ground. So taking the heel as close as you can. If that's too much on your outer hip, you may step the left heel inside of the right knee instead of the outside of the knee. Interlace your fingers in front of your shin. Take a breath in as you lengthen your spine. And then as you exhale, twist to the left. Either hugging your knee and your elbow crease or taking your elbow to the outside of your left knee. Press the inner edge of your left foot down to the ground. Keep your sit bones on the ground. Notice where you can still sense freedom to breathe and release, softening in the hip. Release. Take the block back between your feet. You have the option now to go to a wider base or staying at that narrow base. Take your hands behind your hips. Bring your hips again as close to the block as you can and then lean back. So shifting back onto the palms of your hands. Start to press your feet, the bones of your knuckles of your toes and your heels into the block. This time with a little bit more awareness on the outer edge of your foot. So the pinky edge of your foot and your outer heel. Start to reach through your inner thighs as you push through the outer foot. Notice where this sensation shows up. Might be slightly different than the inner edge. For me, I feel more of my outer hips when I press through the pinky edge and more of my inner thighs when I press to the ball mount of my big toe, but that might be different for you. And then shift your hips back, remove the block again, left foot to the ground, lean back, cross your right ankle over your left knee, point and flex your ankle in order to find whichever position creates more of a sensation in your hip. When I flex, I feel a little bit more in my outer hip. So I'm choosing flexion. You may feel more with the points. And then lift, walking your left heel closer to your sit bone or moving your hips closer to your heel. Start by first finding that first position where you're feeling a little bit of a stretch. And we're using kind of our own discretion. What is too much? And where can you let go? So sometimes when we go too deep, when we allow our thoughts to tell us that, you know, we need to go as far as we can to get release, that's kind of that ignorance of more is better. Sometimes less is better. So feeling that edge of where you feel sensation And then deciding, can you move a little closer? Or do you need to just hang out and breathe? Remembering the exhale is where it's at. The breath can be a good indication. When our breath becomes labored or we stop our breath, that's usually a good indication that we've gone too far. And then move your hips slightly away from your heel. Keep your ankle crossed and bring your left heel towards your right hip, turning the toes back. Right foot either to the outside or the inside of the knee. Interlace your fingers in front of your shin. Find length in your spine. And then exhale and twist. So twisting to that point of still being able to maintain a nice even breath, feeling the lungs and the ribs expand fully. Pressing a little bit more through the inner edge of your right foot. And release. Bring the soles of both of your feet together. Bring your pelvis as close to your heels as you can. Interlace your fingers underneath the outer edges of your feet. Pull up as you press your knees down. So just noticing what has happened with that first initial work into the hips. Option to bend the elbows out and fold, using the elbows maybe on the inside of your shins as just a slight feedback to open up a little bit more. Reach the sit bones back as you reach the crown of the head forward or upward. Hands to the ground, press yourself up. Hands to the outer knees, lift the knees in, and then come into child's pose. So big toes touch, knees are almost mat distance wide. Before you go back, press your hands into the floor, lift your sit bone, creating a little bit more of that extension in your lower back, so a back bend in your lower back. Keep your sit bones lifted as you start to press your heels back or hips back towards your heels. And before you go forehead to the floor, walk your hands as far forward as you can. Gaze between your thumbs. Reach your chest between your thumbs as you reach your sit bones in the opposite direction. And then allow the forehead to rest to the floor. Feeling the breath move into the back and side ribs as you breathe in. And the belly soften and spread as you exhale out. So stretching the hips back towards the back of your mat. Lengthening the side bodies towards the armpits. And then slowly bring your hands underneath your shoulders and lift up to where your hips are setting back on your heels. Lean forward slightly, tuck your toes under, and lift your knees off the floor. So the knees are still open wide. So you're kind of like in a little froggy position. Taking your hips as close to your heels as you can. Shift to the left and reach your left knee out and maybe tap it to the ground towards the outer edge of the left side of your mat. Shift back. Tap your right knee out towards the right edge of your mat. Shift back. Left to left. Back. Right to right. And back. Bring the hands to the floor. Bring the knees forward towards your elbows. Lift the hips up as you come into a forward fold. Square the outer edges of your feet towards the outer edge of your mat. Feet are about hip distance wide, and then walk to downward facing dog. Press down through the ball mount of your first finger and thumb. Come high up onto your toes. Firm the front of your thighs. Press the leg bones back as you lift and spread your sit bones. Start to bend the knees, taking the knees parallel to the floor, resting your belly on your thighs like you're in a child's pose, but your knees don't touch. Keep your right thigh attached to your right belly. And as you inhale, shift forward and touch your right knee to your right shoulder. Shift back into that knee off the floor child's pose. Keep your left thigh attached to your belly and lift the left knee to left shoulder. Shift back. Right thigh stays attached. Shift forward, knee to shoulder. Shift back. Left thigh stays attached. Shift forward, left knee, left shoulder. Shift back. Right thigh stays attached. Inhale, shift forward, knee to shoulder, and then step right foot outside of right hand. Drop your left knee to the ground. Tuck left toes under and bring the left foot to the outer edge of the right side of your mat and swing your arms up and over. So now you're facing the long edge of your mat. Right toes point towards the top of your mat. Right hand to your right thigh. Push the right knee over your toes. So shifting as far to the right as you can. You can allow the knees to come over your toes. Left hand to your left thigh, roll the leg bone out. So pushing a little bit more through the inner knee. Shift for a back up. Keep your hands in your left hip crease. Push the hip crease back, taking the hip towards your heel and your chest parallel to the floor. If you need your hands to the floor, you can use your hands to the floor. Keep your right hand inside of your right knee. Keep pressing it open. Left heel reaching towards your left sit bone, reaching towards your left heel. Come back up, hands to your heart. We're going to start to move through this with a little bit of creating mobility through movement. So inhale, exhale, shift your knee out over your right knee, toes. Inhale, come up. Hinge from your hip, press your sit bone towards your heel, chest parallel to the floor. Inhale, up. Exhale, right knee bends over right toes. Inhale. Exhale, hinge, chest parallel to the floor. One more time. Inhale, come up. Exhale, knee comes over right toes. Keep facing the long edge of your mat, come up. Exhale, hip goes straight back. Square chest to floor. Inhale, come up. Take your left toes towards the back of the mat. Bring your arms over your head. Exhale, twist, bringing left hand to the floor. Right hand to your right knee. Press the right knee forward. Turn the toes out to face the long edge of your mat. Bring the hand inside the knee. Start to press the knee open as you come onto the outer edge of your right foot. Flex the ankle strongly. Both hands to the floor. Bring the right knee beside the left knee and then lower the body down to the ground. Come up onto your elbows, Sphinx pose. Pull your chest forward. Bend your right knee out to the side and turn and look at your right knee. So back into that frog position. Another variation of a frog. Turn your head and chest forward. Bring your right leg beside your left. Hands underneath your shoulders. Press back, knees wide. Child's pose. Shifting a little side to side. Allowing the hips to sway side to side. Noticing right to left. And come forward to hands and knees, tuck the toes under. This time, walking your hands back, lift your knees off the floor, coming more into more of a yogi squat. So knees are wide. We're just upright a little bit more. Reach your left knee out to the side. Touch. Bring it back. Right knee reaches out. Bring it back. A left knee. Back. Right knee. Back. Keep your toes out. Come up, forward fold. Take your heels out, hips, feet, hips width apart. Walk forward into downward facing dog. Press down through the ball mount of your first finger and thumb. Lift high up onto your toes. Press the tops of your leg bones back as you lift and spread your sit bones. Bending the knees parallel to the floor, resting your belly on your thighs. So back to that kind of child's pose with knees off the floor. Keep your left thigh attached. Shift forward, knee to shoulder. Come back into that child's pose squat. Right knee comes forward. Back. Left knee comes forward. Back. Right knee forward. Back. Left knee forward. Step your left foot outside of your left hand. Drop your right knee to the ground. Tuck your back toes under. Bring your right foot to the left long edge of your mat. Swing your arms up and over your head. Left hand comes to your left knee. Right hand comes to your right outer hip. Push your left knee out over your left toes. Keep your hips and the back hugging in. Roll your right thigh bone out. Maybe pushing a little bit more through the inside of your left knee. Keep that knee in line with your hip. Shift back to where your hip's above your right knee. Hinge your hip back towards your heel. Maybe right hand comes to the floor. Keep pushing left knee out. So noticing where you're holding on. Sometimes this hip hinge of letting this deep hinge in your front hip go to reach the heel back. So notice what's holding on. Breathe into those spaces. Shift the hips forward, come up, hands to your heart. Starting to move with the breath, inhale. Exhale, left knee comes over your left toes. Inhale, shift forward. Hinge your right hip straight back as you bring your chest parallel to the floor. Inhale up. Exhale, hinge. Left hip crease. Inhale up. Exhale, hinge. Right hip crease. One more time. Inhale up. External rotation with the hip crease. Inhale. Exhale. Right hip. Internal rotation. Lift up. Bring your right toes to the back of your mat. Arms come over your head. Exhale, twist, bringing right hand to the floor inside of your left foot. Turn left toes out. Hand to the inside of your knee. Press the knee out, keeping your ankle flexed. Rotate head, heart to look towards the back of your mat. Bring both hands to the floor. Left knee besides right knee. Shift shoulders above your wrist. Lower all the way down to the ground. Belly to the floor. Elbows underneath your shoulders. Bend your left knee out to the side like a frog and turn and look at your left knee. Hug your outer right hip in. Feel that rotation in the hip. Shift the chest forward, belly back to the floor. Left leg beside right leg, hands underneath your chest, press up through hands and knees, and then back again to child's pose. Shifting a little side to side. Hopefully we're feeling a little bit more even in the openness of our hips. As we start to pick up our pace, challenge the strength and the stability in the joints in order to create more liberation, more mobility. Shift forward to hands and knees. Tuck your toes under, press your hips up and back into downward facing dog. Feet hip distance or slightly wider than hip distance apart. Walk your hands slightly closer together, almost to where your thumbs touch. Press down through the ball mount of your first finger and thumb. Come up onto your toes, press the fronts of your thigh bones back as you lift and spread your sit bones. So create that deep hip hinge in the front of your hip creases as you create more space on the backs of the thighs and the outer hips. Stay high on your toes, gaze at your thumbs. Bend your knees as if you were going into your child's pose, knees parallel to the floor, and then either step or hop your feet outside of your hands. Lower the hips towards the floor, hands towards the heart, Malasana. Start to pass knees into your elbows and elbows out into your knees. So creating a little bit of tension in order to ease into a little bit more movement in the hips. Hands to the floor. Keep your toes out, shift up, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift, heels out, so outer edges of the feet parallel to the outer edges of your mat. Exhale, fold. So slightly wide forward fold. Fingertips to your hip creases, elbows point towards the sky. Start to reach the head forward as you lift all the way up. Walk your feet together. So feet can be up to hip distance apart or toes touch. Shift your weight onto your right leg. Lift your left knee forward. So balancing on your left or your right foot. Turn left knee out, right heel in. Start to bend your right knee straight forward, resting your ankle on your right thigh. Bending your knee straight forward, move into the depth that you can find. The more you press your ankle down and hug your hip in, the more strength and stability you find in your hip to balance. Press down through your right foot, bring your left knee towards your chest, coming back into neutral. Bending the left knee forward, hinge or right hip knee forward, hinge from your right hip as you start to fold and step your left foot all the way to the back of your mat. Reach your arms over your head. So high crescent lunge. Rotate your left heel down and in, open up into warrior two. Heel to heel alignment, bring your left hand inside or your right hand inside of your left knee. Bend as deep as you can to bring the knee over your ankle joint. Find a little bit of resistance, knee to hand. Press to the outer edge of your right foot, arms out to the side. Reach through your right fingertips and gaze over your right fingertips. Bring your awareness to the inner edge of your foot, press down. Notice what you feel going on, just similar to what we felt in our butterfly, our Baddha Konasana pose. And then keep that awareness and press it in the outer edge foot too. Draw your heel towards the back of your mat. So creating strength, stability all around the joint in external rotation. Press down, straighten your right leg. Turn the right toes in slightly. Turn the left toes out. Bend your knee directly above your ankle joint. Hinge from your left hip crease and bring your chest parallel to the floor. Keep pushing the knee out, second and third toe. Inner edge of the left foot presses down, outer edge of the left foot presses down, drag heel towards hip. Hands can be either at the heart, or you can bring hands to the floor. Start to straighten your left leg as you turn your toes to face the long edge of your mat. So wide leg. Press sit bones towards the wall behind you. Fronts of the thighs press back. Inhale. As you exhale, fold. Let the crown of the head fall towards the floor. Keep the fronts of your thighs strong. Press to the inner edges of your foot, outer edges of your foot. Draw heels towards the long edge of your mat behind you. So the legs stay strong so that we create more space in our low back and hips. Hands underneath the shoulders, press up halfway. Turn your left toes towards the back edge of your mats. Walk your hands towards your left foot as you come onto your right toes. So we're facing the opposite direction. Lift the back of your right thigh high. Right hand stays on the floor. Lift left arm up towards the sky. Bending knee to be over your ankle joint. Outer left hip draws back. Hands release on either side of your left foot. Step to the back of your mat, plank pose. Either lower knees to the floor or lower all the way down, body long, chaturanga. Hips to the floor, toes point back. Lift the head, lift the chest, peel up, cobra pose. Tuck the toes under, lift up and back, downward facing dog. Step your feet mat distance apart. Bring your hands to where your thumbs almost touch. Lift high up onto your toes, press the fronts of your thighs back, lift and spread your sit bones. Gaze between your thumbs. Bend your knees as if you were going into that child's pose with shins hovering. And then as you exhale, either step or hop to the back of your mat for Malasana. Elbows to knees. Find resistance between your elbows and your knees. So the more awareness we find of pushing in and out, you might be able to create more space in your hips. Hands to the floor, toes stay wide. Press up into forward fold, lift the hips. Inhale, come up halfway, parallel the feet to the edges of your mat. Exhale, fold forward with feet wide. Fingertips into your hip creases, elbows reach up. Firm the fronts of your thighs, press them back. Inhale, lift all the way up. Arms come over your head. Hands to heart center. Heel toe the feet in so that your feet are either hip distance apart or toes touch. Balancing now on your left foot. So shift the weight into your left foot, bend your right knee forward. Start to rotate, heel towards the left, knee out towards the right. So finding that external rotation. Outer left hip stays strong as your knee bends straight forward. Rest ankle on your knee. Push right knee out. Hands can either stay on the hip as a reminder to hinge it back rather than pushing it out, or hands to heart. Flexing the ankle. Push ankle into right knee, left knee. Press down through your foot to lift back up, knee to chest. Keep left hip drawing in as you bend the left knee. Hinge the hip crease and shift right foot to the back of your mat. Arms come over your head. Rotate left heel down, right heel down and in. Open up, Virabhadrasana 2. Left hand inside of left knee. Press them together as you bend your knee forward over your ankle joint. Inner edge of your foot presses down, drag back. Outer edge, drag back. So feeling that same sensation of inner thigh, outer hip, right outer edge presses down, reach through your fingertips, gaze over your left finger. So feeling strength, stability, support, those things that we really need in order to create more freedom, more openness. Hands to your heart, shift up, left leg straight. Turn left toes in, right toes out slightly. Bend knee over your ankle joint. Keep your torso facing the long edge of your mat and hinge your hip creases straight back. So chest is parallel to the floor. Knees turning out, head and chest are reaching forward. Maybe taking right hand inside of the knee to remind it to push out. Inner edge, outer edge. Breathe. Start to straighten the leg, or start to twist towards your right foot. Left hand comes to the floor, come onto your left toes. Twist open, gaze up towards your right hand. Lift your back thigh high. Bend your left knee, keeping knee over ankle joint. Gaze down at your right foot. Step, right foot beside left, plank pose. Either knees drop to the floor, or as you exhale, lower all the body down at one time. Chaturanga, lift head, lift chest, cobra. Tuck the toes under and lift up and back into downward facing dog. I'm gonna stick with this flow, but we're gonna move with the breath this time. So we've created stability, we've created strength, we've created the support that we need to establish more mobility, more liberation. Feet wide, hands close. Inhale, come up onto your toes, gaze between your thumbs. Send your hips back, knees towards the floor. As you exhale, step or hop into that froggy malasana at the front of your mat. Hands to the heart. Press knees, elbows in, lengthen your spine, grow long. Hands to the floor. Exhale, heels out, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Fingertips into the hip creases. Pull the hip creases back as you firm the fronts of the thighs. Lift all the way up. Shift your weight onto your right foot. Step it under your right hip. Bring left knee forward. Turn knee out, heels in. Bend your right knee, resting the ankle joint on your right knee, hands to heart. Send the hips straight back. Knee presses out, ankle into the knee. Hands to your heart. Press down through your left foot. Shift left knee towards right foot, left knee towards chest. Hinge from your right hip. Knee bends forward, step. Left foot to the back of the mat, arms come over your head. Exhale, open up. Virabhadrasana 2. Right knee bent. Inhale, straighten the leg, left toes point out. Right toes in, Skandasana. You can also do what we did the last time, so only taking it to your depth. Press through the left foot, come back up, warrior. Shift again towards the back of your mat, toes shift, Skandasana. Either hands remain at heart or use them to press up. Virabhadrasana 2. Inhale, shift up. Toes switch, Skandasana. Walk your hands on either side of your left foot. Come onto your right toes. Twist. Left arm reaches up. Right thigh lifts. Left knee bends forward. Hip hugs in. Hands on either side of your left foot. Step to the back of your mat, plank pose. Lower down either knees, chest, chin, or chaturanga. Inhale, press up, cobra or up dog. Tuck the toes under. Press back down dog. Breathe. I'm going to stay here for a few breath cycles to slow down the breath, slow down the heart. You always have the option for child's pose. And to just feel the body. From downward facing dog, step your feet wide. Walk your hands closer together. Inhale, lift up onto your toes. Fronts of the thighs press back as hips spread. Gaze towards your thumbs. Bend your knees, shins parallel to the floor. Step or hop into your yogi squat. Elbows inside your knees, press out, press in, lengthen your spine, hips reach towards the floor. Hands to the floor. Take your heels out as you press up into a forward fold. Inhale, come up halfway. Fingertips into the hip creases. Pull the hip creases back as you reach the head forward. Inhale, lift all the way up. Feet together. Weight on your left foot. Bend the right knee forward. Start to bend your left knee over your toes as you hinge your hip back. Turn left knee and out, ankle in, and rest ankle on your knee. Hands to your heart. Keep hugging left hip in as you hinge the hip crease back. Press ankle into thigh. Press down through your right foot. Bring knee towards chest. Press down through your left foot. Bring right knee towards chest. Hinge, left hip back, left knee forward as you step. Right foot to the back of your mat. Arms up and then open into Virabhadrasana 2. Find the strength. Find the stability of your legs. Yes, I cued this side wrong, so make sure you do the opposite side. Hands to your heart, turn the toes in. Right toes out. Skandasana, either coming hands to the floor or hands to heart. Press down either through hands or foot. Rise back up. Shift. Virabhadrasana 2, left knee bends. Hands to heart. Right toes out. Skandasana. Inhale. Virabhadrasana 2. One more time. Switch your toes. Skandasana. Hands to the floor. Start to turn towards your right foot. Hands towards the front of your mat. Come onto your left toes. Lift left thigh high, left hand to the ground. Right hand reaches up. Twist. So hugging outer right hip in. Knee stays over your toes. Hands to the floor. Back to plank pose. One more time through a vinyasa or straight to downward facing dog. Take a few breaths in downward facing dog. Bending one knee and then the other. Shifting your hips side to side as you do so. Slow down your breath. Slow down your heart. Notice your hips. Step your feet wide. Lower your knees to the floor. Bring your toes to touch and send your hips back towards your heels. Finding one final child's pose. Shift the hips side to side. And sense what's going on. Notice your body. Allow your mind to be drawn to those spaces of where it is naturally drawn. And question what it is that brings your mind to that space, but not attaching to the why. And regardless of what it is that brings your mind into that space, instead of shifting to your thoughts, shift to your breath. Slow down the exhalations. Slow down your movement into stillness. And stretch the arms forward. Lift up to hands and knees. Cross your ankles, sit your hips behind your heels, and grab your block. Bring the feet out in front of you. Bring the block between your knees. So we've done a lot of opening with the hips in external rotation, kind of opening up the outside of the hips. Now bringing it back into kind of neutral with the legs in internal rotation. So press the block between your thighs. Bring the hands in front of your shins and lean back to where your elbows are straight. Lengthen through the crown of your head. Lengthen through your tailbone. Come up onto your toes. Lean back a little bit. Keep squeezing the block and lift shins parallel to the floor. Maybe release the knees. Keep squeezing the block, point, and flex. Flex your ankles, drop your heels. Keep just the heels on the ground, squeeze the block, keeping your spine long until your lower back reaches the floor, and then roll down. Bring the heels as close to your sit bones as you can. Squeeze the block between your thighs and bring the weight to the inner edges of your foot. Hands beside your hips, palms down. Snuggle your shoulder blades closer to your spine. Press to the inner edges of your feet and lift your hips up into bridge pose. Keep squeezing the block between your thighs. Interlace your fingers. Press the fists down. Shoulders closer to the spine. Lift the chest towards the chin. Bring the weight to your left foot. Think about lifting right foot off the ground. Continuing to squeeze the block. Lower right foot. Squeeze. Inner edge of the right foot presses down. Lift. Left leg. Lower left foot. Release the hands. Release the hips. Undo the shoulder blades. Release the block from between the knees. Feet wide. Drop both knees to the right. Outer edge of the right foot comes to the outside of your left knee. Inner edge of your left foot is on the floor. So kind of a reverse figure four. So we have our right hip open in external rotation. Left hip is in internal rotation. So the knee is going inward as the foot goes outward. Release right foot back to the outer edge of your mat. Swing the knees to the opposite side, shifting hips to the right, knees to the left. Inner edge of the right foot is on the ground, knee is going inward. Outer edge of your left foot perhaps stacks on the outside of your right thigh. Left foot back to the floor, hips neutral. Hug the knees in towards the chest. Take a breath in. Exhaling, release the legs to the floor. Arms to the floor on either side of your hips, palms face up. Using your breath, each exhalation, use it to create more space, more softening, more release. Whether that be in the physical parts of your body, whether that be in the breath and the restraints of the breath, finding a normal, natural, slow rate to your breath. Rather that be to the trip that our mind takes us on. So as thoughts and sensation come into your mind space, acknowledge them, maybe even label them, and then let them go. One of the attributes that makes us human is our ability to experience and remember emotions. It's what we can have memories of joyful, exciting things throughout our life, throughout our past, and we can remember those things. But the flip side is that we also can remember those things that cause us hurt, and suffering. It's the attachment to these things that creates that human existence of suffering. Believing that that which is outside of us defines us. And this concept of moksha or liberation is the realization that that is not what defines us. That the experiences, our thoughts, our emotions are not what define us. And the ability of being able to let go and be present in the movement and the moment is the true meaning of liberation, of vidya, of true knowledge. It's a hard human thing to do. Slowly invite movement back into your body. And reaching your arms over your head, extend through heels or toes, find inner body length. And bending your knees, roll onto your side body. Using your hands and your arms, slowly press yourself up into a seated position. Bring your hands to heart center, feeling as your hands connect, yourself meet self. Bowing into the space of your heart, acknowledging the true self, the self untainted by thoughts, judgments, feelings, emotions. Just a moment to be present with what is. And thank you so much. The divine in me honors the divine in you.